Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you could join us today for this very special Global Action Week for Education, or GAWE or SAME in Espanol, coalition meeting with the Global Campaign for Education US, with a really fantastic array of partners from around the globe. And we'll share in the chat box the full agenda and their full bios as well, so that you can see more about their terrific work. But we're thrilled that you could join us today. My name is Jennifer Rigg, and I serve as Executive Director at the Global Campaign for Education US, or GCE-US. Please introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat box with your name, your organizational affiliation, and location. And for today's event, we have captioning within Zoom available, and presenters will be speaking in Spanish and English. So to turn on your captions, please select the CC button for closed captioning at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you have any questions about how to set this up, please, of course, just let us know. You can select here which language you would like to see the subtitles in, and which language is currently being spoken. And then they also offer this option to show the original and translated languages. So that way you can see both languages in your transcript, if you choose to select the full transcript option, or in your subtitles. And we're really grateful for everyone for joining from multiple countries, multiple locations, specifically for Global Action Week for Education, and to collaborate to work together to ensure quality inclusive education for all. We also invite you in the chat to please check out our upcoming Global Action Week for Education events and actions that are being organized by members and partners of the Global Campaign for Education family around the world. And in particular, if you're either based in the US or have colleagues who are, or people across your networks, we would especially like to encourage you to please reach out to your members of Congress, your policymakers. This is such a critical time to let them know how important it is to fully fund global education. And we have a variety of tools to make that as easy as possible for reaching out on that, as well as legislation that's really vital for this work. And we'll be doing multiple actions together throughout the month. Today, throughout this session, we want to have as much interaction with participants as possible, and we invite you to post questions, comments, and ideas in the Zoom chat box. Today's event will feature keynote remarks from Dominic Muasya, Executive Director of the Kenya Education Fund, Iliana Priore of CLADE, and Balqees Hamzat, from Rising Child Foundation. And we really want to have time for discussion, questions and answers, and hearing from all of you about announcements, actions that you're doing, things that are coming up, both for Global Action Week for Education and beyond. Given this important focus on decolonizing education and decolonizing education financing for this year's Global Action Week for Education, our discussion will center around GCE national, regional, and global coalitions' commitments to decolonizing education financing, what this year's theme means in practice, ways that our partners and wonderful colleagues who are speaking today are really making this real in terms of empowerment for people around the globe. And so we're really excited to welcome Dominic from the Kenya Education Fund. He co-founded Kenya Education Fund with the late Bradley Broder, a Peace Corps volunteer. Kenya Education Fund is locally led, and he really emphasizes capacity building among Kenyans while minimizing Kenya's reliance on international aid, moving to more sustainability. And so there's such important work that they're doing. We're really grateful to Dominic, Stephanie, and all colleagues who are joining us today from Kenya Education Fund. And again, we'll make sure that everybody has the full access to bios from the speakers today. We're really honored to welcome you to speak with us today. Over to you, Dominic.
Thank you, Jennifer, and the GCE team for organizing and for this great invitation. And Hello, everyone, and all the colleagues from around the world. My name is Dominic Muasya, Executive Director, Kenya Education Fund, and I am joining you from Nairobi, Kenya, a few minutes outside of the city of Nairobi. And I'm very glad to be part of this great conversation about decolonizing education across the globe. So if I if I may just mention briefly as a way of introduction. Next, please, about Kenya Education Fund. It's that we are a non-governmental organization, and we exist purely to be able to support young men and women from the country who will not otherwise be able to go to school without financial assistance. And we hope that someday we will be able to get everybody to be self-reliant through education. We do this by way of providing a 4-year scholarship for high school and 1-year scholarship for university or college. A scholarship because education in Kenya is not free, and especially at the high school level, it's quite prohibitive financially. And a lot of young men and women will not be able to access that part of education without any financial support. And then, of course, university, again, it's not readily available because of the cost implication. And so what we do is provide 1 year of scholarship at the university or college level for them to be able to get in, and while they are inside, they can access other forms of funding, for example, government loans and support from other organizations. So far, we've been able to put over 4,000 young people into school who have gone through the program and graduated, currently having about 560. And we have seen a transition rate of over 98% on average. Those who are graduating from university towards college. And we believe it's because of the other auxiliary support programs that we have, like mentorship, life skills, reproductive health, and career readiness that prepare them to be able to succeed at that level going into the next level. Next, please. Specifically talking about things that have disrupted education in this country, there are many. One, we could have teachers strike, for example, when they are not happy with their employer and they are agitating for either better working conditions or they want more pay rise. We've had experiences or situations where teachers have gone on strike for 3 months straight, which means either students are in school without teachers or they've been forced to go home. We've had situations where students have been away as a result of natural disasters. For example, flooding, when it rains and some locations are cut off completely because there's no bridge or there's no road and students cannot access their schools. And coincidentally, even drought, the opposite of flooding, where because of drought, parents have to move from one location to another in search of food, or the school is not able to feed the students, and so they are not able to go to school. Another thing that we've witnessed in the recent past is political activities in two ways. One, during elections or national elections, learning institutions are used as polling centers. So during that voting period, students have to be away from school for some reason. And then if the election is contested, it means there will be a repeat election or a repeat voting process, which means then again, the students have to stay home longer. A few years ago, we experienced a post-election violence where the two parties didn't agree, and we saw some violence that resulted to deaths, and students had to be home for quite a number of months. Again, we've experienced or witnessed cultural or traditional practices. Students have to take time off school because of an initiation process. For example, boys who are going through the circumcision, it's usually several weeks event, or girls who have to relocate to another place for FGM, for example. A few cases of tribal conflicts have also kept students away from school. And then disease outbreaks. The major one being COVID, which I'm going to talk about recently, that saw schools closed for over 9 months, which was unprecedented. And then I'll be talking about what KEF did to mitigate about that particular closure, which resulted to students staying home for over 9 months. Next slide, please. So I may not need to go through the global figures on what happened, but basically it's about 1.7 billion learners were at home as a result of the disease situation or the pandemic. And while only 1% of those infected actually lost their lives, the bigger impact was as a result of the measures or the preventive measures that were put in place. And that resulted to schools being closed for a very long time. In Kenya particularly, can we go to the next one? So the measures that I'm going to talk about, of course, included people not having to go to work, public transport system being stopped or halted for some time, and people having to stay at home for whatever reason, and of course, particularly for students having to close schools abruptly and going home without preparedness as to how that period was going to be spent. And as a result of that, we saw or witnessed a lot of families who lost their income as a result of parents not being able to go to work. Domestic violence, there was a lot of pressure on families, and quite a number of domestic violence instances were reported. Early pregnancies, and especially on teenagers, this was up by over 40%, where girls who are at home as opposed to being in school experienced a lot of pregnancy. In one of the counties, we had over 4,000 cases of pregnancies without the first 3 months of that closure. 152 teenagers or teenage girls actually got pregnant within the first 3 months of that period where they were at home. The next one. So some of the measures that government put in place, or some of the ways, the next slide please, was that the government tried to institute e-learning or learning virtually. Let's go back one slide, where students were supposed to access learning virtually. And then after some time, it was noticed that only 14% were able to access that part of learning or form of learning, and more so the ones who are in urban areas. And the other 86% didn't have any or adequate way of virtual learning. And the main reasons were lack of power, of course, due to distances in the rural setups. Many people didn't have smart devices. In some cases, you only have a phone for one family, and that phone is kept by the father or by the head of the household, and no one else has access. And even where that was possible, then they may lack connectivity like internet, or even the battery lifespan was not enough to support any form of learning. And so for that reason, while we were trying to find out where our students were and what is it that they were doing, we thought we could intervene and print learning materials that could be distributed to all the students who could access them, so that learning could continue even while the students were at home. So we teamed up with a local partner and was able to bring together a number of teachers who put together some content in all the subjects, and we were able to print over 26,000 books that were distributed, together with sanitary pads. It's important to highlight the element of sanitary pads or sanitary towels, because most girls in Kenya will only access sanitary pads when they're in a school setup. Then it so means if they're out of the school system, they're not able to access sanitary pads. And this became an issue. And so we were able to provide over 16,000 girls with sanitary pads. At the next slide. And all this happened within a very short time, and we were able to distribute these materials to 44 out of the 47 counties in the first round. Let's go to the next slide, please. And while we wait to go to the next one, I could also say that we selected some of the partner schools that we work with. So we had 60 distribution centers across the country where these materials were distributed. And then students from the neighborhood of those particular schools would come, irrespective of whether they go to those schools, and collect books. So that's the map of where we're able to go or distribute the materials. We could go to the next slide, please. These are photos of the actual distribution. And then at the end of it, we were able to do a survey. We could go to the next slide. At the end of the distribution exercises, a few months later, we were able to do a survey to see how effective this exercise was and whether the students actually benefited from this initiative. So 67 of the students who got these learning materials, revealed that this was very useful, and especially as they prepared to sit for the national exams. Let me mention that in Kenya, at the end of the 4 years of high school, students will sit for an exam, which is national, and this exam will determine whether a student will go to the next level or not, whether they will go to a university, whether they go to a diploma or mid-level college, or whether they will go to a technical institute. So they prepared for that exam using the materials that we managed to distribute. And 67% of them actually managed to score a mean grade of C+ and above, compared to the national average, which was at 31%. And then 8% of the students continued to use these materials even after they went back to school, which meant the materials and the content that we put together was actually useful for the purposes that we did that for. And then the 87% of the schools that participated in this exercise confirmed that the content that we saw distributed was useful and improved the education outcomes for them. And then 97% of all the students who got these materials shared with other people, either in the family, in their communities, or even with their classmates. And some of them ended up using or sharing one book with over 60 people from their communities. Last slide, I think, the last one. Last slide, Annie. Yes, so this is just one of the feelings or the feedback by one of the students who explained, more or less explained, as to what was happening while they were at home. While the government expected them to continue learning online, but she was able to say or state that it was not possible because of one, technology, and also finances, because each time they have to buy data for them to be able to access the online material, and that was not possible. And in some cases, the phone would only be with one person, and if that person was outside of the household, then it means no one could access whatever material that was shared before the phone. So this was a very good intervention during the 9 months that, and especially the Form 4s were away from their schools. Thank you very much, asante sana everyone, for listening and being part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing such important information. And you can see already in the chat, thank you to colleagues who are already mentioning, your work is clearly filling a big need. Thanks for the presentation on this. Thanks to Casey. And then also, we had a question come through, or comment from Suzanne. These statistics are absolutely sobering. And if anybody would like to see the slides directly, Katie kindly shared that attachment directly in the chat box. And we'll also make sure everybody receives the full materials as well. And so for a quick discussion, Dominic covered so much important work. We'd love to hear from all of you about anything that you're seeing in your context, questions, comments, ideas as well that others might have.
Hi, going to jump in with a question, if that's okay. Yeah, so Dominic, great presentation. And it's amazing that you're working with so many young people. I was wondering, in the context that you're working in, how have sort of young people mobilized and supported the efforts that you've already been working on to support education?
Thank you, Anne, for that question. If I got it right, you're asking how have young people mobilized to support the kind of work that we're doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I thank you. I could start with our alumni, the Kenya Education Fund alumni who have gone through the program, graduated, and joined the job market, or they have joined the world of work, if I may say, either by way of securing meaningful employment or even having started their own form of employment or income generating ventures. So they went ahead and registered a KEF Alumni Association, which is independent of the organization. And the primary goal of that association is actually to support others, whether through the KEF or through their own community setups. As we speak, we have over 700 who have registered in that alumni association, and we have 87 who regularly give funds to KEF to continue supporting other deserving young people. In addition to that, we see a lot of young people who come to volunteer during events. For example, our career readiness, our life skills workshops, reproductive health. We see them coming to volunteer, and not just for admin purposes, but also to share their own experiences, having gone through the program, having gone to universities. They come to mentor other young people who are in their program so that they can, avoid the pitfalls that they personally went through, and so that they can make better decisions for themselves as they are growing. So it's mostly through time, expertise, and finances, and sometimes connections, linking other young people with opportunities that would benefit them. I hope I've answered you. Thank you.
And I just want to interject with what Dominic was saying is, prior, when I was with World Vision and I was working in a fragile context with the Syrian refugees, excuse me, in Lebanon. And, I think Lebanon was, at that point was holding about 1.8 million refugees, and the disruption in education is staggering. You could have natural, disruptions like droughts or, pandemics, war, conflict, and it's really hard to get the kids back once they've been out of school, especially if they're, in a host country. It's the disruption in education is just, you kind of lose a generation, and it's hard to get the kids back once the disruption in education happens. Education is so important in every context. And I've seen it firsthand. And again, once it happens, recouping those kids back is very difficult after a year or 2 years, and so if we saw, like Dominic had mentioned, the pandemic of 9 months of disruption, it's very difficult to recoup the kids back, because they've either gone on and, things have happened, pregnancy, or, they've gotten work, different reasons. But I think this is so important. It's such a important conversation when we have disruptions in education like this.
Thank you, Stephanie and Dominic. We have 2 questions as well for the discussion. Thanks to Sintayehu. Thank you for the presentation. Most of the issues you raised are very interesting, and I guess not just what is your plan to solve the problem, but ideas from all of us. And then Casey also asked, are you seeing impacts from COVID closures on younger students being less likely to pursue high school or college education, or are you struggling to be at grade level in those settings now as they move into them? So Dominic, I know we've talked about the amazing work you all are doing at local levels, and then influencing to strengthen public education systems as well. So we'd welcome any reflections from you on longer term problem solving and how we can all help, as well as impact from those closures. Thank you.
Thank you. I will start with the second question, I think from Casey, the impacts of COVID. Let me say that simple answer is yes. There are definitely negative effects on that prolonged closure. One, having come from home, after being away for 9 months, there was pressure for the school system to recover the lost time. So a lot of material was pumped so that the schools could recover or complete the syllabus within a very short time. And case in point was last year when we had 2 national exams in 1 year, which means 1 year of work was to be completed in about 6 to 7 months. So students did not do well. And we had also cases of a lot of mental related issues in learning institutions as a result. And that particular class did not do very well. Conversations are still going on as to how to help the students mentally to come back to where we were pre-COVID times. Yeah, so there's definitely negative impact as a result of those prolonged closures. Some students never came back. We have girls who became parents, we have boys who went to look for jobs elsewhere. They never came back, or they just joined some socio-cultural practices that did not allow them to come back. Or in some cases, families were not able to actually pay for the education to come back. So those, all of those have been witnessed. In terms of the long-term solutions, I think as a community and as a society, we need to put measures that allow some resilience when such things happen. Some infrastructures that would allow, for example, learning to continue while maybe such disruptions happen, provide technology or provide some connectivity, or even organizations to be flexible. Organizations like Kenya Education Fund and others on the ground to be flexible and adjust their programming to address some of these unforeseen emergencies. For example, what happened. I know sometimes we are very fixated on our missions and all that, but then other unforeseen circumstances do happen, and organizations need to be flexible enough to address such needs when they happen. And of course, the other thing would be to push the government towards a policy change that allows more investment in our learning institutions or the education sector in general, for the sector to be able to have some resilience and cushion itself against some of this. I hope I've answered.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. And let's keep the ideas flowing and in the chat box. Thank you to all of you very much. And we shared the link as well, where people can learn more about the fantastic work of the Kenya Education Fund. And we're really grateful to everybody that's a part of the GCE-US coalition and the broader GCE movement globally, to make sure that I know that it's a challenge to make sure that we're collectively working day to day and with our eye towards that long-term work that's so critical for building that community resilience and policy change at the same time. So with that, we're really excited to add to the discussion a fantastic, important aspect of work happening in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so I'm going to pass to our wonderful colleague, Marina and Tone Lopez. And please, all of you, join us in congratulating our 3 amazing senior fellows, Annie Lynn, Katie Luce, and Marina and Tone Lopez. They all just recently graduated from their degree programs and are off to super exciting adventures around the globe for the next phase of their exciting careers and to be part of this broader movement as leaders. And so we're grateful to all of them for the strong legacy they're leaving with their amazing work at GCE-US and across this network. Over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It means a lot. So now Me gustaría introducir a nuestra próxima presentadora, Iliana Marina Priore Infante. Es una especialista en el desarrollo de los niños, es doctora en educación y en ciencias de la educación y magíster en currículo. Iliana también es una especialista en primeras infancias, evaluación y políticas sociales. Es miembro del Comité Directivo de CLADE y actualmente es la presidenta de la Organización Mundial de Educación Preescolar, OMEP Venezuela. También Iliana ha publicado como autora y coautora de textos y artículos, entre otros, Emancipación de las subjetividades en las infancias y en juventudes, tendencias evaluativas de la atención y educación de las primeras infancias en América Latina y el Caribe, la efectualidad en la educación, programa Comunidad y Familia, una experiencia de inclusión desde la participación. Bienvenida, Iliana. Muchas gracias por estar aquí.
Muchísimas gracias. Para mí es un placer poder presentar la campaña latinoamericana por el derecho a la educación, CLADE, para que la conozcan con toda la potencia y por supuesto adecuada a este contexto latinoamericano y caribeño que es tan diverso. Para que nos conozcan, la CLADE es una red plural de participación activa de 18 organizaciones de la sociedad civil. Estamos presentes en 18 países en este contexto latinoamericano y caribeño, donde la sociedad civil tiene una participación protagónica. La CLADE promueve acciones de movilización social, pero con una incidencia directa en la defensa del derecho humano a la educación para todos, todas y todes, y por supuesto la promoción de democracias que sean participativas. Promovemos igualmente la educación que sea pública, laica, gratuita y transformadora para todos y todas a lo largo de todo el desarrollo de la vida y como parte de la responsabilidad del Estado. Y bueno, les comunicamos que estamos en nuestro 20º aniversario. Siguiente, por favor. Siguiente lámina. Ustedes van a ver en la presentación algunos de nuestros mensajes fuerzas, como el que ven, sí a la educación pública. ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Cuáles son nuestros miembros y nuestras alianzas? En América Latina y el Caribe tenemos 18 coaliciones nacionales de educación. Nos conforman también 10 redes regionales y organizaciones internacionales 7. Tenemos diversos grupos de trabajo, hasta el momento son 6 los que se han consolidado con una fluidez de producción en comunicación estratégica, género, juventudes, recaudación de fondos, incidencia legislativa y educación universitaria superior. Tenemos una participación continua en más de 9 espacios que tienen una incidencia global y en la región. Tenemos articulaciones, alianzas y acuerdos que son formales en 3 espacios que son internacionales y regionales. Y conformamos 3 movimientos mundiales de educación. También formamos parte del estatus ECOSOC, un poco para que puedan conocer quiénes nos conforman. La siguiente. Asimismo, para nosotros es crucial que puedan saber que la CLADE considera de manera estratégica la articulación con quienes son titulares de derechos y movimientos sociales en diferentes ámbitos vinculados con la educación. Para nosotros, nuestros miembros están compuestos por organizaciones que se dedican a temáticas que son transversales, que todos y todas trabajamos, como la defensa de los derechos de las mujeres y las niñas, niños y adolescentes, el derecho a la comunicación y la democratización de los medios de comunicación. Siguiente. Tenemos una planificación estratégica que es importante destacar que no solo la ha hecho el equipo directivo de la CLADE, sino que ha sido la participación, producto de la participación de estos 18 países que conformamos, que hacen parte de América Latina y el Caribe. Y de esa planificación tenemos los siguientes objetivos. Primero, tenemos un propósito a mediano plazo hasta el año 2026 que tiene que ver con la búsqueda del cierre de las brechas para que el ejercicio del derecho humano a la educación sea pleno, afirmando y sosteniendo ese sentido transformador que debe estar en articulación con otros derechos para todos, todas y todas. Nuestros objetivos más específicos tienen que ver con la incidencia entre quienes toman decisiones sobre políticas públicas y financiamiento del cumplimiento por el derecho humano a la educación. Promovemos la generación de información de manera continua y sistemática para generar ese conocimiento que es necesario para el fortalecimiento de ese sentido público de la educación y que nos habla de unas narrativas propias de la educación como un derecho humano que es universal. Para nosotros también es fundamental el fortalecimiento de esta búsqueda de incidencia que debe tener y asumir la sociedad civil y las comunidades para el cumplimiento efectivo de este derecho humano a la educación. Siguiente. Tenemos unas estrategias que son transversales, que están presentes en quienes, en nuestros miembros, en nuestras alianzas, en nuestros proyectos y programas. Primeramente, la articulación y asociaciones interinstitucionales e interorganizativas. Para nosotros es fundamental como red plural articularnos en esta gama de actuación que tenemos e incidencia política, pedagógica en la región. También tenemos como estrategia la generación de conocimiento y agendas temáticas que mencionaremos posteriormente y que vamos adecuando a las necesidades contextuales de forma periódica. La comunicación estratégica para nosotros también es una estrategia transversal, la comunicación continua y permanente con cada uno de nuestros aliados y nuestros miembros. Y por supuesto, sostenidos con ese fortalecimiento institucional que para nosotros es clave. Y recordemos que la educación no se vende, se defiende. La siguiente. Tenemos prioridades que como son asumidas también como derechos, las estamos mencionando, lo que no significa que este orden implique una jerarquía particular. En el marco, la primera sí es el marco de todo, que es la defensa de la educación pública gratuita para todos y todas y todes. La educación emancipadora y transformadora que nos da una perspectiva de lo que nosotros asumimos como educación. La prioridad de la defensa del género, de la inclusión y la interculturalidad. Esa educación que comienza desde el principio, por eso es que nosotros tenemos grupos temáticos, actuaciones y proyectos que van desde educación desde el principio hasta lo largo de toda la vida, como un permanente. Por supuesto, participamos en el seguimiento de la Agenda de la Educación 2030, defendemos, promovemos y trabajamos sobre políticas jurídicas que sean favorables a este derecho humano a la educación y para nosotros es fundamental también como lo tenemos en el marco de la CEN 2023 el tema de la financiación de la educación. Que acompañamos con la de justicia fiscal. Para nosotros también el tema del fortalecimiento de la democracia, el de la justicia socioeconómica y medioambiental y por supuesto la acción colectiva y el desarrollo de cada uno de nuestros miembros en el ámbito institucional. La siguiente. Nosotros tenemos y compartimos la Semana de Acción Mundial por el Derecho a la Educación en el 2023, pero que tiene un contexto específico en América Latina y el Caribe. Por eso es que queremos compartir con ustedes estos 3 mensajes fuerza que hemos visualizado para este año 2023. Primero, asumir que la deuda ha sido una trampa colonizadora. Para nosotros, América Latina y el Caribe pagó 95.000 millones de dólares en servicios de esta deuda en el año 2020, por lo que eso ha generado una asfixia en los presupuestos nacionales que han impedido el financiamiento adecuado a la educación pública porque han tenido que priorizar este pago de la deuda. El segundo mensaje fuerza para nosotros es la cooperación internacional para el cumplimiento de este derecho humano. Para nosotros debe establecer una relación que sea transparente, que sea horizontal y por supuesto que sea decolonizadora. Necesitamos, nos urge agendas, contenidos, metodología y una gestión y organización que debe construirse desde otra perspectiva que nosotros asumimos como solidaria. Nos urge entender y asumir, tal como se asumió y se propuso en el compromiso de Incho en el año 2015, el destino del 0,7% de este Producto Nacional Bruto de los países desarrollados a la ayuda del desarrollo, cosa que actualmente sabemos que no se cumple. Necesitamos, y más que eso, es urgente, la necesaria justicia fiscal que se establece por la generación de políticas fiscales que sean progresivas en la región. Es importante que conozcamos que 300.000 millones de dólares salen de América Latina y en el Caribe y que se evaden fiscalmente. Por supuesto, los estados, nuestras naciones, deben invertir en educación pública sólida, equitativa y relevante, y necesitamos resolver este tema de justicia fiscal. Allí, en esta lámina, pueden ver la invitación que tenemos para el próximo 30 de mayo en nuestro diálogo regional sobre financiamiento en la educación, contextos, cambios y propuestas en América Latina y el Caribe, con esta gran aspiración de la inversión en un mundo más justo, que es la temática de nuestra SEI. Y bueno, para cerrar y abierto a todas las preguntas, inquietudes que puedan compartir, tenemos la lámina de cierre. Aquí tienen los datos de nuestras redes sociales en esta última lámina, la siguiente, sobre nuestra página web, nuestras redes sociales, nuestros contactos. En la siguiente lámina, por favor, que nos permiten accesar a la diversidad de programas, de proyectos, de todas las iniciativas. Le podemos decir que la CLADE vive por la potencia y esta actuación sostenida y enérgica de cada uno, una y una, que conformamos este gran equipo de trabajo por el derecho humano a la educación. Y quiero cerrar con una frase que ha sido un pregón importante para nosotros, que es soñar, idear, diseñar, reimaginar esta educación para otro mundo que sí es posible. Gracias y abiertos a este espacio de diálogo con ustedes.
Muchísimas gracias, Iliana, por esta presentación espectacular, de verdad muy empoderada, muy inspirador. Muchísimas gracias. Yo puedo empezar con una pregunta que tengo sobre cómo la inclusión y la participación, especialmente de comunidades vulnerables y los jóvenes, y otros también en la formulación de estas políticas educativas, puede avanzar la descolonización de la educación y cómo en particularmente esa inclusión de los jóvenes en ese proceso puede ayudar y avanzar la descolonización del financiamiento de la educación.
Ok, bueno, primeramente decirles que para nosotros la participación de los jóvenes es fundamental, no es solamente que está establecido de forma política, sino que se efectiviza, hay un ejercicio de participación. Tenemos una agenda temática y un grupo en conformación también de juventudes, y la temática de descolonización de la financiación de alguna manera también es transversal. La participación de jóvenes, de adultos, de niños y niñas, de todos y todas los que conformamos este proceso, para nosotros es fundamental. decolonizar del financiamiento, como bien le colocamos, tenemos estas tres ideas fuerzas, pero pasa por un proceso de transformación. La CLADE, para llegar a las actuaciones de incidencia política, legal, pedagógica, de manera relevante, realiza procesos de formación y transformación continua del pensamiento, porque entendemos que no puede haber una transformación de la justicia fiscal de este ejercicio, una transformación de la financiación, si no entendemos esta perspectiva otra. O sea, tenemos que transformar nuestro pensamiento para transformar nuestras acciones. Esto lo digo porque no es un recetario. Nosotros hemos asumido que los cambios, para que sean de impacto, no pueden seguir simplemente una lista de orientaciones, sino que parte de esta transformación que tiene que hacerse de manera continua. Por eso es que cada uno de los programas, la formación de colonizadores es fundamental, donde entra la financiación. Nosotros insistimos en las coaliciones que son nacionales, que están en estos 18 países, la incidencia y el trabajo para que puedan no solo trabajar el tema del financiamiento desde la ejecución, sino desde los presupuestos. Por ejemplo, recién acabamos de culminar un proyecto de presupuesto para la participación o la inclusión de género e interculturalidad, donde nos formamos para hacer una incidencia que sea real y donde hubo participación también de los jóvenes, porque sus ideas, sabemos que estas generaciones, por supuesto, es un proceso del germen colonizador que está tan arraigado, pero que tienen también toda la apertura por el mismo hecho del vigor propio de la juventud para poder generar estos procesos. A veces es mucho más rápido en ellos acceder a estas transformaciones y bueno, no solo son una alianza, sino que son quienes también lideran estas actuaciones y acompañan a las coaliciones, a las redes y a estos organismos internacionales para que la financiación sea realmente justa para este derecho humano a la educación.
Muchísimas gracias, Iliana. Hay otra pregunta en el chat de Suzanne, que pregunta si ya hay países que están cumpliendo su compromiso financiero del 0,7% para la ayuda al desarrollo.
Sí, ciertamente tenemos estudios, es importante que lo hayas mencionado, porque tenemos varios estudios que pueden acceder, no lo tengo directamente a la mano, pero vamos a hacerlos llegar, Pierina, para que puedan tener acceso sobre cómo está el estado del arte en este proceso de financiación, pero como tendencia sabemos que no se cumple, porque no solo estamos hablando del 0,7%, sino que estamos hablando que aun cuando se cumple, el uso, la implementación de este dinero no precisamente garantiza el derecho humano a la educación plena, sino que también se dirija, ciertamente hay una inversión, pero también es una inversión que es excluyente, que toma algunos tramos de vida donde hacen énfasis a unos géneros en detrimento de otros. Entonces, aquí hay que combinar no solo los porcentajes, y eso ha sido parte de los estudios que hemos realizado, no solo decir cuáles son los países que lo cumplen y quiénes no, sino quiénes los asumen, cómo lo hacen, porque también eso nos habla y nos visualiza y evidencia una gran colonización también en la financiación de quienes cumplen. Entonces, esto es complejo porque es una mirada interseccional donde se mueve desde distintas perspectivas que hay que mirar. Les invito a que puedan visualizar en nuestra página web los últimos estudios sobre justicia fiscal y los eventos que hemos realizado para que puedan tener información de mucho más detalle sobre esta temática.
Muchísimas gracias, Iliana, por la presentación y por esas respuestas comprensivas. Ahora le voy a pasar de nuevo a Jennifer para que pueda introducir a la próxima presentadora.
Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. And thank you so much, everybody, for helping us try out Spanish and English Zoom translations through closed captioning. We hope that that has been working for everybody, and we welcome feedback, questions. We're happy to help in any way. Casey also just mentioned, thank you for the interesting presentation, really fascinating points on advocacy and the way the financing is implemented. Looking forward to checking out the information on the website further. We also shared the link to the Global Action Week for Education, GAWE or SAME, specifically for multiple regional and global activities and events. There's a petition that everybody can sign, and we encourage you to help share that across your networks as well, and many fantastic resources for social media, communications, mobilization at all levels with governments. And we'd love to hear from all of you as to what you and your colleagues and partners have been doing for Global Action Week for Education, and what you're planning as well. Obviously, this needs to be more than just 1 week, right? Which is why we're really delighted for all of the amazing speakers and participation today as we're going into a jam-packed agenda next week, and then continued and growing drumbeat of advocacy. And our colleague Katie Luce is joining actually from Indonesia. Katie.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer, I think you cut out.
We can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
All right. Okay, great. So next we'd like to introduce Balqees Hamzat from Rising Child Foundation. And Balqees is an accomplished advocate for gender-based violence survivors, a mentor, and content creator with a wealth of experience in community development and digital marketing. She co-founded the Global Builders Initiative, an organization that strives to make a positive impact on the world by implementing community development programs in line with SDGs 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 16, and 17. Balqees, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hello, good day, everyone, and how are you doing? Yeah, it's afternoon here in Nigeria, so wherever it is you're watching from, thank you so much for joining in. And today we are going to be going through decolonizing education financing as a tool and a pathway for gender equality and ending gender-based violence. Please the 2 other slides after this one. Next. And the next one. All right, so decolonizing, it's multifaceted, like we know, and in the area of education, we are saying we want to rectify the historical inequalities and power imbalances that is informing and influencing resource allocation, especially when it comes to education. And because it is a very important part of things that has affected a lot of young girls and women, especially, let's just say everything, marginalized communities. So we are saying that when we are able to decolonize education, we are able to help those who are not accessing education one way or the other get through the system and be able to benefit from the system. Please, the next slide. Okay, so what is the nexus? Here we're talking about existing gender disparities. You know, in a place whereby we have the understanding that just give the funds, let it go in, and it is given to one set of people above the other. So you want to understand that many times in our schools today, we have more male than females in school. I mean, according to the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, we have 9 million girls that will never set their foot in schools, over that of 6 million boys that will never set their foot in their primary schools. So that is saying that the primary and the most basic education is not possible for 9 million girls in low-income countries. And then we have unequal resource distribution. When this financing goes into wherever it is going into, there is a place of resource distribution that is not in the way it should be. What I am saying at this point is girls and women face barriers, especially limited access to quality education, infrastructure, and adequate learning materials. And also we have to look into gender-biased policies that makes it hard for resources to be equally distributed. And so when we are addressing financing, we are saying that it is very important to understand that these resources needs to be shared. And it comes with a finance policy in place, and we need to be able to get through things beyond how it has been done before our time, because there are more things happening in the world today, which is making it harder for anyone to get above the system. So please, next slide. Okay, so yeah, the next slide. This was the numbers I was giving. This is according to the World Bank. 77% of girls in low-income communities and countries, they won't complete their primary school education, and then 83% of boys will complete their primary school education. So this is not something that we want to actually let go. We have to look into this. Please, next slide. Okay, so what are the strategies and approaches? Quickly, we need to redefine funding policies. Please go to the next slide so we can explain that. So redefining the policy says intersectional approaches. There are different identities and different twists to people's experiences, especially in low-income communities. In a state where the average earning power is not even up to $1 in a day, how are you expecting this family to be able to send their children to school? So poverty is a very, very important factor to consider when redefining funding policies. In this community, what do they need? That is where intersectional approaches comes in order to make sure that whatever money is going into education, it is spent and used right. Then gender-responsive budgeting. We know, and we are knowing that gender-responsive budgeting is something that is not really working, because we are looking at everyone should go to school, but we need our girls to be in school, because according to the United Nations, it is important to send girls to school because it's not only work for the impact of gender equality, it works in health, it works in entrepreneurship, it works in the global GDP as a whole. So we need to look into gender responsive policies. How much is going into female education? How much is going into scholarship for female children and female students in their various schools? And then we need public-private partnership. That is saying that from the government to the CSOs to the communities, whoever it is that is at the helm of making decisions, we need to come together in order to enhance accountability and transparency in this resource allocation. Please, the next slide. Now, equitable resource allocation, first we have equity-based approaches. Equity is saying that we are sharing to marginalized community according to what they need. Rising Child Foundation as a team has done a lot in this regard, because we do not go to communities saying, oh, we want to give you this, we want to work with you on your education system. No, we want to know what you need. What is it that your students, your children, your schools, what do they need at this point in time? And how can we provide these things for you? And this is a way that we try to work with everyone from the place that they are standing rather than the place we feel that they are standing. Then data-driven decision making. We do not do anything without data. I mean, every single time there is a project, there is an action to be taken, what is the ratio of girls versus boys that this is going to affect? How exactly are we putting this together to make it work in order not to leave out our policy and our value of gender responsive work in the society? And then participatory decision making. Here we make sure that we get every stakeholder involved. We get every single person involved. This is not just a case of, okay, we are going into this community and then we just want to see those at the top. We want to know what the teachers think about what we are doing. We want to know what the student sees. We want to see those in charge as students. I mean, the head of the students community in the school. What do you think are the things that we are not finding right? What are the things that your teachers are not seeing that we need to know in order to make this work for you? So these are some of the things that we do before giving out anything at all to anybody, in order to make sure that we are not taking one end of the problem and leaving the other. Please, the next part of the slide. All right, so building strong partnership. Here we have multi-stakeholder collaboration, advocacy and awareness. We use the radio, we use the TV, we use every single medium possible to create awareness on the fact that this needs to work. And then for decolonizing education financing, we also make sure that we are sharing what we are doing and how we are are using what we have to get the results that we want. And this makes it easy for us to be looked up to as the organization that knows what they need to do part time. And then capacity building. Every single person on the team, the champion, the founders, every single one of us go through different forms of training. And before we even do anything for anybody, we try as much as possible to make sure that they are trained in the aspect of what we want to share with them. We are not telling you to put together students, girls, to say that you want to talk to them without understanding what gender-based violence is. Every single time, every single month, we come up with financial ways to actually help our champions get education much more than what we are providing, using UN courses that are free. If you feel you do not have the data to actually get this course, all right, fine. We are going to provide that for you, but we need you to have superior knowledge of what you are going to be doing. And in educational financing, we feel that if this form of this source of funds can be disbursed into capacity building for people, then it's going to be easier to get those who understand the game we are trying to play, who understand the music we are trying to sound to the people, who understand the work we are trying to get involved. Because a lot of times we've come to notice that we are having issues with people not having the knowledge that is needed to actually make these things work. So rather than waiting for them to look for the knowledge when they have what it takes, we are bringing what it takes to them. We are bringing what is needed to them. Please, the next slide. Yes, empowering individuals and communities. Next one. Promoting gender-sensitive education. I work as a gender-based violence mentor for about 10 schools in Kwara State, Nigeria, which is the headquarters of Rising Child Foundation. But I work as a person who tries to let the school understand that every single week in your school, we want it to be easy for your students to understand what gender-based violence is. So we get them to be trained. We share topics, we share ideas, we share discussions with the student, with the teacher. We have a teacher in charge, and then we have the students who are in that club. We call it a club because it's not a classroom thing yet. The government is yet to put that into consideration. But we are doing the little that we can do to actually add gender-responsive curriculum into the things that they do. So every single week in all the schools that I work with, and this is more than 50 schools in Kwara State, we have an organization that is actually working towards sharing this to the people. Then we have the teacher training and development. No teacher involved in gender-based violence in any of the schools that we have worked or we are working with is not trained in this aspect. And we do not only have the normal training, we also have one-on-one training. As mentors for myself, I have one-on-one trainings with my teachers and talk to them about the things I feel they are not doing right or things that they need to get better and understand better when it comes to gender-based violence and actually making it work with their students. And then safe spaces and support. This mentorship group is more like a safe space, and we do not just have the general classroom safe space. No, what we have is a safe space where a student can speak with one person, can speak with a mentor, can speak with someone who they feel understands what they are going through, how it is working for them. We recently saw the case of a young girl who is about to be forced into marriage. She's only 19 years, and then she can give consent. But we tried as much as possible to ask her, what do you want? And she said she wants to go to school because the parents have already decided that they want her to get married. And so decided not to pay any of her fees. And she was struggling to do that. So the school came together to contribute this money in order to send this girl to school. So in the case of if financing is actually available, this can be taken to the government, and the government or whatever body that has that money sponsors this kind of child to school for as long as they want to, or for as long as the policy allows, and we do not have to worry about our cases unsolved. Because one of the things I have come to realize as a mentor in the space is that many students are scared to speak up. They are scared to tell what the problem is. They are scared to tell that they are suffering from gender-based violence because there is no one to actually sponsor them, to help them, to give them what they need in order to further their education. I was recently told in my last meeting with my student that 2 of my students are no longer coming to school. Why? The parents are not capable enough. They're not capable to do it. And then it was said that the child was raped, the child got pregnant, and the parents felt like they couldn't take up the case because they do not have money to pay to the law. And there are so many things out there now, because the last time we went out as a team, Rising Child Foundation, we went to the Ministry of Justice, we went to a lot of ministries, and what we were told is that the financing is the most important part of solving gender-based violence cases. The financing is the most important part of making it work in gender-based violence, because we have lawyers who is ready to go to the court, but who is paying their fees. They are volunteer prosecutors. We also have people who are willing to talk that this is what is happening, but they do not have any other support system once they leave that place where they are being abused. So this is one of the important reasons why we feel that education financing is extremely important, and we need to take it away from the usual way of things. Please, the next one. Okay. Oh, all right. All right, thank you. So, comprehensive GBV prevention program. As a young person, I co-founded my own organization, Global Builders Initiative, and the goal is to get more people involved in the gender-based violence advocacy work. This is not being funded by anyone but myself and my co-founder, and it's a lot of work getting young people to use what they have, the little that they have, to actually help others get their life straight. And as much as this looks like a bogus kind of thing, we are trying as much as possible to make sure that these programs, we call it Voice of Change mentorship program, we get them to go to different schools in their locality and to spread the gospel. We call it spreading the gospel. So we get them to go there to talk about what gender-based violence is, what is available as a means of eradicating this issue. Then teacher and staff training on GBV. We also go to schools to train the teachers and the staff on what they are doing, what they need to do, how they need to look into the life of their students in order to ascertain where the problems are. And then the next thing we are planning as an organization is engaging parents and communities, because we have come to realize that many students are willing to actually report. But when the parent is not willing to take up the case, it goes off. And that means that we are not able in any way to provide solution for that person. So when we have conversations with school principals, with school proprietors, I am told things like, it's not possible for a parent who is unable to cater for themselves to want to go to the law. And even if you are willing to take it up for them, they still feel indebted one way or the other. But if they know that there is a fund in place that is working hard for this, I feel that we are able to get more people to show up and report cases of gender-based violence in the school, in the community, in the home. And this way we are able to get more people understanding where the problem is coming from. Please, next slide. All right, so amplifying youth voices. Like I said, youth-led initiative. Rising Child Foundation is a youth-led initiative, and every single member of the team, we are youth. No one is above the 30 yet. We are all young people in various spheres of life trying to make something out of our life. And the student engagement and leadership. We are coming to the part of actually going to schools and setting up clubs and systems in universities to help spread this gospel, because we feel that we cannot do it alone. We are young persons out in the world doing our own thing one way or the other. However, those that are still in the system, they need to understand what the problem is and where the problem is coming from. So we are trying as much as possible to get them involved. And that's why we have people from various schools working outside their comfort zone, and we're still bringing it back to their comfort zone. Please, advocacy and activism, we are mobilizing every single use that we can find. We are doing everything that we can do, and we are trying everything that we can try to make this work. It's not a day job, and it's not a job that we can do alone. However, if we are able to decolonize how education is being financed, we are able in every way to cut down the rate of gender-based violence in our society, especially in low-income communities and low-income countries. Because this way, people know that they have what it takes to be protected, to be saved, to be accepted. And this means in the long scheme of things, they are able to report and they feel heard and needed, and they are willing to transfer and translate this single act of kindness to other people, reducing the rate of gender-based violence in our society. It's been said that 1 in 3 students, in one way or the other, have been abused. Now, think about a class of 30, 1 in every 3. That means we are looking at over 50% of the class. I have mentored over 1,000 students in the last 9 months. And I can say that when I get stories, when I get discussions on this is happening to me in my house, in the school, this person did this, I start to feel like, when is it ever going to stop? But when the issue of money is no longer in the picture, we get to find the main thing to hold responsible to stop this menace in our society. Please, next slide. All right, so the journey toward decolonizing education financing is a collective effort. And that's why I'm so excited that we have everyone in the room today discussing what they have been able to do, what they are doing, and what they wish can be done to decolonize education financing, to get the things working, to get the people right in the face of things, to get those things right in the face of people too, because structural inequality seems to be the biggest issue that we have as countries, as people, as communities, and as societies. So we hope that education contributes a lot to gender-based violence. But if financing is out of the reasons why education is not working, then we can know how best to still go about gender-based violence, leaving the biggest issue out of it. And we can pave way for a more just, equitable, and inclusive future for every single person. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope that this has been a beautiful deliberation. Thank you. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you so very, very much for all of your amazing work and for sharing and for this important call to action. I am being told my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Okay, and to kick off the discussion, thanks to Suzanne for putting in the chat, and everybody please chime in, raise your Zoom hand or put a question in the chat, please. And a huge thank you to you for your presentation and for your wonderful work. Suzanne asks, even if the outside funding is available, how do you find that there are ways, or do you or others have recommendations on how to get parents and caregivers on board with supporting their daughters going to school if they do not value education for their daughters, in terms of household and community change?
All right, so one of the things that we have come to understand is we need to get them to see those that are doing it right. I mean, in a situation whereby a family has never seen a young woman making anything out of her life, then it's understandable for them to feel, or for them to have the mindset that it's nothing when a woman goes to school because she's not going to become anything. So what we do is we show up as capable people in appearances, in knowledge, and in wisdom to get them to understand the place of bringing the women closer. We also try to understand what they are facing and what their community is like. So we present our case to them in respect to what they are going to see, what is easy for them to understand, and how they are able to communicate with us easily. So in a situation whereby I understand 2 languages, but if I am going to a community where they do not understand one of my 2 languages, I bring a person who understands their language, rather than saying I want to go there myself. But it's going to be easier to direct my message to this person with someone who understands them than going there with all of my knowledge and not being able to communicate. So the communication is a very key part of things. And that is why we try as much as possible to be surrounded by people who have the credibility, who also have the awareness, and who knows the know-how of making these things work and helping them understand what it means. We have principals who have said to us that, what is the essence of what you're doing? And it's a lot to take in, to think that, someone who is said to be educated does not understand the place of gender-based violence, or does not understand how gender-based violence is affecting the society. But being a young person and being able to communicate the gap that we are trying to fill has made us, a lot of people embrace that idea much more than the usual way it would have been. So communication is key, letting them know you understand it, the issues in their own society and community, explaining that to them is easier to get them to see the light rather than expecting them to follow my path without trying to put them into consideration. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so very much. And there's a question and specifically sort of digging a little deeper. Thank you for emphasizing the importance of inclusive participatory decision-making. What advice or recommendations would you give to organizations and advocates joining us today and part of this broader movement on what we can all do to help amplify and include and empower youth voices in key decision-making spaces?
Good. I'm sorry. So one of the things that can be done in this situation is to ask yourself, my organization, does this work? Is this something that is in our thematic area? If yes, it is, then when you have those in the policy making spaces, you get them to see your view. Write open letters, call them out on social media, advocacy visits to their key offices, and get them to understand their roles as a young person or as a body, as an entity in helping to fight gender-based violence. Get them to understand why they are needed. Everyone wants to be needed as humans. So it is very important to make sure that part is clear. Why is a person in mineral resource needed in fighting gender-based violence? Find the link between these two systems and bring it together, then present it to them. That way you are able to bring their interest, you are able to bring their value to the table before even presenting your own value at all. And also, if it is not included before now, look into your workspace. Is it inclusive? Is it equitable? Are the work that you do, are they shared equally? Are they shared equally? Yeah. Are you being inclusive of every single person? Are you being equitable? Are you making sure that everyone gets what they need and not just what you think that they need? This is going to actually form the basis of being able to advocate for gender-based violence in your own little space. And then start from your community. Start from the little thing that you can do. Talk about it once in a while, read about it, and see how far we are behind when it comes to making our community ready for a world that is equitable. Thank you. Any other question?
Thank you so very much. And, especially as this is vital for the work that we're doing every day. And such an important call to action. Many are looking at ways to tackle school-related gender-based violence and to do so in proactive and policy changing ways with youth very much at those policy making tables. And so let's keep this important conversation going. And as we move to announcements as well, we would love to hear from everyone as to what you're planning for the rest of this month and Global Action Week for Education and ways we can all amplify and help together. In particular, we wanted to invite everybody to throughout the GAWE or SAME, the Global Action Week for Education, and the rest of this month. Please join us next week for the Inclusive Education and Early Childhood Community of Practice meeting on May 31st at 9 a.m. ET, and we'll share that link in the chat. Many of our colleagues joining today have already shared action blogs or quotes or short videos or reels on what does decolonizing education mean to me. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please, we encourage everyone to join in, and you can contact us directly, or Katie's kindly sharing a link in the chat box where you can go to get involved in advocacy and to share that information to be amplified on social media, to be posted as well. And then please also, we're really excited to be working with youth across the Education Cannot Wait, Education and Emergencies focused youth and students constituency. We're sharing hot off the press some information on endorsing that really critical youth democracy movement. And we're grateful to student and youth groups, education and human rights groups around the globe that have been joining in support there. And we encourage everybody as well to get involved. Are there any other announcements or things that people would like to share, both in terms of actions that are coming up, ideas that you have for future coalition meetings, any types of partnership work of areas where you'd like to connect with others or share lessons learned, etc. We'd love to hear from all of you. Marina, would you like to share anything further about the endorsement? And thanks to you, Henry, and everybody who's been working on that as to ways people can also be supportive of not just one youth and student voice on really critical global policymaking institutions like Education Cannot Wait, but in a really democratic, representative way.
Yes, well, we, like you mentioned, are working alongside the ECW youth constituency that has already been endorsed by a number of student and youth movements that are democratic by nature, including the All African Students Union, the Global Student Forum, and others. And so we will be posting on social media to continue building momentum for endorsing the ECW youth constituency movement, and would just ask our partners that, to like, reshare, and if they're comfortable to also, write their own statements of endorsements. And if you're interested in learning more, we'd be more than happy to help connect you with Henry, who is working with other student and youth movements around the world to do so.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Please join us in really thanking everybody for joining this important work, all of your partners as well. And we want to extend a very big thank you to all of our wonderful speakers for your fantastic presentations, resources shared today during our Global Action Week for Education kickoff coalition meeting. We encourage everyone to continue these vital conversations and actions on decolonizing education financing. Please reach out anytime with ideas, things that we can do together, not just this month, but throughout the year, of course. And we're grateful to all of you for taking action, continuing to spread the word. And again, huge thanks to all of the organizers, especially to our graduating wonderful senior fellows, Marina, Annie, and Katie. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.